Welcome to the Bear Sheep broadcast, where we talk about building stability, preserving legacy, and strengthening the communities we call home. I'm Kalia Heaven Barakyahu, the founder and president of Bear Sheet, and I'm honored you're spending this time with us today. Today we're talking about something many families experience, but few people are truly prepared for: inheriting a home. What actually happens after someone passes away and leaves behind property? Who controls the home? Can it be sold right away? What happens if multiple siblings inherit together? What if there's still a mortgage? And what if one person wants to keep the property while everyone else wants to sell? These are real questions families are asking every day, often during one of the most stressful and emotional periods of their life. So today we're going to focus on practical clarity, what's happening, what people often don't realize, mistakes families can make, and what families should do early to protect themselves, preserve relationships, and preserve generational wealth. One thing many people, I should say, do not realize is a house does not automatically transfer just because someone passes away. A lot of families assume that if a parent verbally says the house belongs to you, or you can divide everything equally, that everything is already handled legally. But sadly, that's not always how it works. What happens to property depends on several factors: whether there's a will, how the deed was structured, whether there were co-owners, whether the estate has to go through probate. Now, let's briefly explain probate. Many people hear the word probate, but may not understand what is probate. So let's just talk about it briefly. Probate is the legal court process used to settle someone's estate after they pass away. The process, it varies by state, but many times it involves validating a will, identifying the legal heirs, paying outstanding debt, and determining who has authority to handle the assets, like the homes, the vehicles, and the bank accounts. And this is very important because until proper authority is given, family members may not be legally able to sell the property, transfer the ownership, access certain accounts, or even make major decisions regarding the estate. This is one of the reasons some families often become overwhelmed. Emotionally, everyone has already made some assumptions about what should happen, but legally, there still may be important steps that must happen first. Here are a few things that many families sometimes don't realize until they have to go through something like this. Utility companies may require a death certificate before discussing or transferring the utility accounts. Banks may freeze certain accounts after being notified of a death, which can temporarily affect access to money needed for repairs, needed for bills, needed for funeral costs, needed to keep the utilities on in the property that was once inhabited. Insurance policies may also need immediate updates if the property becomes vacant. Some insurance companies reduce or deny coverage if a property sits empty for too long. When you lose someone or you inherit a property, you definitely want to make sure that you keep those utilities on. At that time, you're not thinking about cleaning out the fridge. You're not thinking about if there's no power there. You may be more susceptible to people noticing that the house is vacant and want to break in. So it's important to maintain these things until you have a plan and decisions are in place. The other thing is insurance. Like I just mentioned, you want to reach out to an insurance company and let them know you need a vacant insurance policy. You want them to know that, the house is vacant and that insurance needs to be maintained. That way your house is protected. And the other thing that you may want to do, now this depends on how many people own the property, but you may want to look into changing those locks. So whoever has possession of the property You want to make sure the person has to have possession, but to change those locks once they have possession, because you don't know how many people have the keys and who the keys were given to. So you don't want people just coming in and out of the house, taking things, starting to live in the house, and you don't know anything about that. One of the biggest surprises for some families is the property taxes. Not only are you inheriting a property, but you're inheriting everything that comes with that property. So property taxes, insurance, utilities, mortgage payments. They simply don't stop because you inherit a property and someone has passed away. The property still has those financial responsibilities attached to it, and now you're responsible for those things. One of the things, or the best things, that families can do is focus on organization early. Make sure the property is physically secure. Like we talked about, changing those locks, making sure the windows are locked. There was a house that we were in and someone had passed away, and the family members didn't realize that the upstairs windows were unlocked. And so they secured the doors, but they didn't think to go around and check the upstairs windows and the back door. So you definitely want to make sure that your doors, your windows are secure, and the alarms. Do you know that alarm code? Call the alarm system up, let them know, the alarm company up, let them know what's going on. You want to make sure that alarm is set. And in this day and age where we have Ring cameras and Google cameras, all types of cameras, you can enlist an alarm system where you can actually see what's going on to the property, because it's very important to know who is coming and going when you have a vacant house. Sadly, vacant homes, they quickly become targets for theft, for vandalism, for squatters, for scams. So you want to make sure that you have secured the property. The other thing you want to do is gather important information: the deed, mortgage statements, insurance information, tax records, utility information, and any wills or estate planning documents. You can have one folder that's organized, to save it for the family so that you have it, so there's no confusion later. And a good idea too is if there are bills there too, start going through those bills. Are these bills paid? Do any of them say delinquent? Are these important? Make sure you know what else is going on with that estate. You shouldn't have to feel like you have to rush big decisions. And this is one thing that a lot of families feel rushed. You lose someone, you have to arrange for the funeral. There's death certificates, you have to notify people. And then now you're left with an inherited property and you're like, what do you do? And sometimes it's like, well, there's all these bills, we want to sell it. No, so-and-so wanted to keep this as an investment for the family so future generations can enjoy it. No, we need to make some money from it so we can rent it. Like there's all these things going on. And while that's going on, you have other people reaching out to you. We can buy your house quickly. We can sell your house for you, put it on the open market. You have all that going on, in addition to the emotional state that you're in. So don't feel like you have to rush any major decisions. And probate itself sometimes can be quick, or sometimes it can last months, depending on if a will was left or if not. Sometimes getting conservatorship or getting control of a property, it can take naming people who are the heirs, finding them, tracking them down. Sometimes these things can take months, even close to a year. So don't rush any major decisions. Sometimes people can immediately promise the property to someone or allow relatives to move in. They can remove belongings or start talking about selling before fully understanding the legal and financial situation. So want to just slow down first, get information before making major decisions. One of the most common situations families face is multiple people inheriting the same property together. And it may be a lot easier if all the siblings get along. But if the siblings don't get along, or they're estranged, or maybe one is a minor, there's a lot of different things that go into that situation. So, for example, if 3 siblings inherit a parent's home equally, but often everyone has a different idea of what should happen. So let's say one person wants to sell the property immediately, another wants to keep it because of the emotional attachment, someone else may want to rent it, another family member may not want any responsibility at all. And this is where confusion and conflict begin. If one sibling starts paying taxes, insurance, or repairs, that does not automatically mean they own more of the property. So every situation is going to be different, and that's why if you're going through a situation and everyone is not on the same page, then you want to sit down and have a mediator or someone be able to talk with all of you together so you can really figure out the best thing to do. Also, if one heir cannot legally sell the entire property, so they can't sell the entire property without involvement or agreement from the other heirs. So if one person says, we're going to sell, nope, you may try to enlist an agent to sell that property, but when it comes down to getting that thing to closing, you get a buyer, you legally can't sell that property because you only own one part. Now, what you can do is sell your interest. So let's say with that same example, you have 3 heirs and one wants to sell and the other 2 do not. You can sell, and you're the one who wants to sell, you can sell your interest in that property to someone else. And now those 2 heirs will own that property with that third person. So that is something that can be done. But many times everybody wants to be on the same page. You can just sell it if you're going to sell it and divide the proceeds. Another major issue happens when one family member moves into the property without a written agreement. At first, it may seem temporary or harmless, but months later, families may begin arguing over bills or maintenance, access, repairs, whether someone should start paying rent. I experienced one time someone having to go through the courts to get that family member out because they allowed them to live in there, and now they wanted to do something else with the property. So now instead of being able to sell that property right away or rent that property out to someone else right away, they had to go ahead and give the notice like you would do any other tenant. They had to wait that time frame, then they had to take that person to court, then they had to wait for the sheriff to come and issue the notice for eviction. All those things had to happen. Had they not let the family member move in, then that would have caused less conflict and less situation for that person, because someone is still maintaining that property. Even if it is mortgage free, somebody is still paying those taxes, paying that insurance, paying utilities. So now they're still paying that where they really want to sell or they want to rent. And verbal agreements often make major problems later because people remember conversations differently. So you definitely want to record. I mean, you want to not have to do contracts with family members, but if someone forgets or they remember it differently or they interpreted it differently, then now everything is up for debate. So record the conversation and get a written contract. Everyone should understand that. You just want to do things decently in order so that there's no questions at the end. Something that's really good to do is in that agreement, cover who is paying the expenses, who has access to the home, whether someone can live there, for how long they can live there, how are repairs handled, And what's the long-term plan for the property? This should be done with someone you have moving into your home, but this should also be done when you're inheriting a property, because sometimes you may have 20 heirs to a property, and I have seen it, and only 2 people are making the payments on the property. But when that property is sold, all 20 people are going to get their share of the property. So is that fair to the 2 people who for all this time have been maintaining the property taxes, utilities, or whatever is going on with that property? So it's really good to just have a family agreement. All these people are owed money from this property. Who's paying what? What's everyone's responsibility? And that can help protect relationships in the end, because there's no questions. Everybody agreed to it when everything was good. When you inherit a home, it doesn't mean that it's automatically paid off. So if there's still a mortgage, you will inherit the mortgage debt, the tax debt, any liens. If there was a second mortgage, a reverse mortgage, if a contractor bill wasn't paid and he put a lien on the property, if the IRS has a lien on the property, if whoever put something on the property, a lien or a judgment, you inherit all of that. And if the property needs repairs, you inherit that as well. So if mortgage payments stop completely because you're not making those payments, then foreclosure can still happen during the probate process. So it's very important, like we talked about in earlier episodes, not to ignore those bills. In this case, don't ignore those bills either. And I know this is now something else that is taken on in addition to your regular family life that you had going on. But it is important to protect your inheritance to make sure you know those bills. Mortgage companies, they still expect communication. Insurance companies, they still expect communication. And if the insurance lapses, that can cause major financial risk, because vacant homes may require different insurance coverage. You have a little bit of time if the insurance doesn't lapse, but if it does, then you definitely need that vacant home insurance. And it's good to have anyway. Some of the things that you can do early on is contact the lender early. As soon as you know that you've inherited a property, talk to the lender. Don't ignore the letters, the notices. The lender is going to work with you. Explain to them what is going on. Many of them will come up with a plan to help you. Some questions you should ask them or ask yourself is, can anyone realistically afford the property long term? Are repairs manageable? Is there equity in the home? Is someone emotionally attached but financially unable to maintain it? Because sometimes people want to live, they say, okay, I want to keep this property. Everyone else wants to sell, so I'm going to buy it from you. And then when they go to get a loan or when they go to liquidate assets, they don't have enough to buy everyone out. You also have to see, is the property creating an opportunity for you, or is it creating stress? And from there, you make those decisions that best help your life, help everyone involved. Some people have, purely kept property out of guilt or emotion without looking at the financial reality. And you don't want to underestimate the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, or repair costs. Now, if you inherit a property and you want to keep it to help build wealth, then that is great, because here at Bear Sheet, we are pro wealth, but we are also pro you making those right decisions. Is this the time for you? Is that house better spent kept in the family? Maybe you can rent it. Maybe you can Airbnb it, as my I hear people say. I don't know if that's a real saying, but put it on the Airbnb. Maybe you can move into that home and sell the home you're in, especially if it's paid off. Now you're mortgage free. But if that's not what you want to do, then you may want to think about selling it. Even selling it can create wealth. You can sell it, everyone gets their portion, and then you can invest that money. You can pay off some of your bills so that you don't have as many bills to pay. So just think about it honestly and look at yourself and your situation and the financial reality and see what is the best decision that's going to help you. And even though we don't want you to rush those decisions, depending on the property, you don't want to take too long either, because if that property's empty, it can deteriorate depending how long, which it can start losing value. So that will take a while, but you just want to keep that in your mind. You don't want to wait years to make a decision unless you have to. But you want to take some time and make that right decision. Now, if you're thinking about keeping the inherited home, there's a couple things you want to look at. You reach out to a realtor or an appraiser and get a property valuation. You want to know how much is that property worth. Get repair estimates if there are things that need to be done there. And how old is the roof? Like, even if it's not big things, maybe there's no gaping hole in the wall, but is the roof 20 years old and only has a couple years left? Is the HVAC system original from the 1900s? That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but you want to find out how old these things are, because you're going to end up having to maintain or replace these items. Get the tax information. See how much you're going to be paying in property taxes, and get your mortgage payoff, because maybe it is worth keeping, and maybe the mortgage is something you can easily afford. There are companies out there who are always looking for properties to owner finance. You may be able to do some short rental income by owner financing the property, getting some money for it while holding the mortgage for the property. You just want to have accurate numbers so that you can make the right decision. And how far is this property from you? Because if you're in Florida and the property's in Vermont, that may not be the best property for you to keep. But if you enlist a property manager, if you want to get it, then there you go. You have somebody in Vermont that can manage that property for you. Just mark that down as an expense and know that you need to take the time to interview a few property managers so you get the right one. This happens often. One family member may want to preserve the family home or continue living there, but others may need money. They may want closure or don't want the responsibility. So there's a buyout option there. A buyout means that one heir purchases the ownership interests of the other heirs, which we did talk about a little bit earlier. Now, this may involve getting the home appraised, calculating everyone's share, and refinancing the property if necessary. Buyouts often require financing. Some inherited homes may not qualify for refinancing because of the property conditions. So that's something to think about too. Can a personal loan be gotten for this type of situation? And sometimes the delay in making these decisions can increase legal costs or family tension. So you really want to think about what is the best thing for the situation. One thing I really want you to understand from this episode is inherited property can build generational wealth, but it can also create generational conflict. So preparation changes the outcome. Families who organize early, communicate clearly, and plan ahead often preserve more wealth and experience and less conflict. Now, all that sounds great. When you're going through it, it's not always that easy. So this is where you want to have as much of a level head as you can. Put aside those discrepancies and really think about the future of the situation and what is the best, what's the outcome that everyone needs. When you do that, or you bring in a mediator, a pastor, a friend, someone who can be more objective to help you all make those decisions, it will really help preserve your sanity and your generational wealth. Make sure, once again, your paperwork is organized. When your paperwork is organized, it's much easier when things get busier, or you're going through the probate process, or you're looking to go ahead and list it on the market. Have these things organized. Don't ignore the taxes. When taxes become delinquent, in some places it's 5 years, but you don't want to wait that long. They'll start sending collections and all of that, but they can put your house up for auction. So you have to check with your county and what area you're in, but you don't want to have those delinquent taxes for years and years. And in some cases with inherited property, that family member may not have paid their taxes. So you may inherit a property with delinquent taxes. You definitely want to look into that. Anything that can make you lose your property and take away the time you need to think about what you need to do needs to be done up front. Mortgage, any liens on the property, taxes, look at those things up front. Insurance. Don't forget to look at those delayed repairs or repairs that may be coming up soon, and understand the process. These broadcasts are here to help you to understand what to expect. So if you have to go through it, you're aware. If you own property today, don't leave your family guessing. Organize your documents now. Put them in an easy space. Many times if you're married or you have a significant other, you'll have passwords. And if you're the person who does all the bills, or you're the person who's managing all those things, the spouse may not know how to get into anything. So if something happened to you, even if it's something you just went on a long trip, they may not know how to get into the bank account, how to pay the mortgage, how to do these things, because whoever is the one who's handling all the finances, they have access to everything. So start early. Make it easier because it's a process. Organize those documents. Put those passwords somewhere where they can be accessed if needed. Discuss your desires early if you have property, and review your estate plans regularly. If you are currently dealing with an inherited property, these are 5 practical things you can do this week. Gather all your documents. Verify insurance coverage. Communicate with all the heirs early. Is everything going to be left to your children? Communicate with them early so they know what's going on, where they'll be able to find these documents in case something happens. Will it be in a safe deposit box? Will it be with your attorney? Let them know, or at least let one person know. Understand the mortgage and the tax obligations of the inherited property, because many times there are taxes that are going to have to be paid on inheriting property. Consult qualified professionals before making those major decisions. And these steps can help prevent major problems later, even if you're going through it right now. If today's conversation gave you clarity or encouraged you in some way, we invite you to connect with us. Visit bearsheetcorporation.org or email info@bearsheetcorporation.org, or give us a call at 844-405-3924. If you missed the broadcast, we have gone ahead and started putting these episodes on YouTube. So look for Bear Sheet Corporation YouTube channel. You'll be able to see or hear these broadcasts on there. And also, if you go to our website, bearsheetcorporation.org, there's a link to listen to these broadcasts. Thank you for spending this time with us today. This is Bear Sheet, building stability, preserving legacy, and strengthening the community we call home. Join us next time as we continue conversations that help families move forward with clarity, confidence, and dignity.